Okay, so just finished lunch because, man, I was hungry. Like, hungry. I got so hungry that I just started feeling bad. I started feeling bad. I'm like, man, I need to eat. I had a meeting that went on until, I don't know, it was 3 o'clock their time, but it was like, no, it was 4 o'clock their time when it ended, 1 o'clock here. I'm like, I'm ready to go. Like, I hadn't had lunch, man. And they just came back from lunch. So they're good. But man, anyway, if you guys don't care about my little hunger issues and hunger pains, be sure to join the Discord, which is going to be down in the description box below. Oh, and I also have another meeting tonight as well. That's a big meeting that actually is important. I'm not saying this, no, I'm not saying the meeting I had is not important. It is. But this other is a little side gig, which is very important. But anyway, so this, of course, deals with Downtown Tacoma. This is more development news. Now, there's a few projects that are just now starting to come to light. And I think that because it's not over, the sickness is not over, but the fact that you now have the governor relaxing things finally a little bit more, and the economy is starting to open back up quite a bit here. Excuse me. And developers feel a little bit more secure. You're going to see a lot more projects start to open, right? It's just inevitable. And the credit is to a lot of different things. But one thing I will say is that the sickness actually has propelled Tacoma's economy quite a bit. I was really on pins and needles thinking that we were going to be really hit hard here in the city and all of that. And there has been a lot of businesses that have closed, not a lot, but there's been businesses that have closed, and folks feel the pain for sure, for sure. But we've only had a handful, literally 5, based on reports that I've seen, restaurants that closed. 5. We also had a lot of restaurants that opened during that time, and we have others who are pending because they can't open until the permit process opens back up again fully, or it's already open. It's just there's such a backlog. So these restaurants can't open officially until everything is approved. So you have all of this pent up demand, and you have supply that's not quite there in terms of reaching the demand, but it's ready to go as soon as the city is ready to say yes, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, and I'll get to the apartments in a second. Second thing is there's a rumor that a satellite office is coming to Tacoma relatively soon. Now, relatively soon, I don't know what that means. And I don't quite know the size or anything other than relatively soon there is a satellite office of a company coming to downtown Tacoma. Now, there's been a lot of news lately. I remember, let's see, about 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago, when you looked in the business journals, all you saw was information about Bellevue. Bellevue's up and coming. Bellevue's doing this. Bellevue, Bellevue, Bellevue. That's all you heard. And you still do. Bellevue is leaping because you have a lot of corporate giants that are there. But you also have a lot of people that's fleeing. Sorry. You have a lot of people that are fleeing Seattle, and they're going over to Bellevue. Most of these are going to be a lot of your tech workers. But it's kind of like, might as well move to Bellevue. It's the next it place when it comes to folks in Seattle. Now, it's not the it place, in my opinion, when it comes to the region, but it is when it comes to Seattle. So a lot of the growth you see there in Bellevue are already more wealthy people moving in. It's basically what it is. You have wealthy people leaving Seattle and going right to Bellevue. It's just wealthy moving in. That's it. Tacoma, on the other hand, is getting a lot of everything. So it's getting people that are coming from all over, moving here, and you have wealthy, you have middle class folks, you have some that's a little bit poorer, but you have a whole mix of people moving into the city. And the growth is pretty unprecedented, to the point of that now you have people flee. And I don't want people to think fleeing. I don't think that's necessarily the right word, but people are definitely taking notice. And there are folks who want to move out of Seattle. They feel like Seattle is a great place to definitely do business to some degree, but it's not the end all be all. And I think a lot of folks, the romantic views of Seattle is starting to wane a little bit, mainly due to a host of different things. From, political issues, there's bad judgment that's being done, in my opinion, on a few different things. Heavy tax type situations. There's a big spike in crime. There's just a lot of different things, right? Sometimes people say, tell the truth about things. What they want me to do is basically be an echo chamber of what their thoughts are. And I don't know what people's thoughts. I don't know what people's thoughts are. I can just basically tell you just an overview that there's a lot of different things that turn people off about Seattle. Price is one of those big pieces. We don't have all day to sit here and talk about piss stories. But what we do have time to talk about are, why are they choosing places like Tacoma? Tacoma and Pierce County are building so many apartments, and there's so many in the pipeline, that it's really attracting Seattle's attention. And not just the people anymore, and not just retail businesses anymore, but now the city government of Seattle is paying close attention to it, and bigger companies are paying attention to it. Right? A lot of these are local developers, but you're starting to get international interest as well. And that's been the case for quite some time. But a lot of them are saying, wait a second, let's try to get in before it's too late, right? Because Seattle right now, if you're a developer, you got to be extremely well financed. You got to be a much bigger company to do that versus a few years ago. Same thing with Bellevue. You got to have a lot of stacks. You got to be a very well financed, bigger company in order to even touch that market. That's not the case in Tacoma or Everett or some of these other places. You still can get in if you're a medium developer. Let's say that you have assets of 80 million. You could still jump into the market, right? So, downtown Tacoma, there is a Long Foss waterway. I did a video that either come out before this or after this, talking about 2 parks down there that they are creating and working on. But that area used to be just an industrial dump, wasteland, buildings just derelict, all of that. City have torn those down a long time ago and have been refurbishing them, and there's parks and stuff like that. However, there is a developer looking for land right along the waterway, the waterfront. Okay, so there's Dock Street and then there's water. Well, no, there's Dock Street, there's some land, and then there's water. And so the city is saying, like, hey, we're interested in selling this. There's another developer who's already built stuff, but they don't have any immediate plans, and the land that they own is not big enough to really do what they want, so they're going to sell it to this other developer. This other developer is saying, we have the funds to do what we need to do. We're going to build something. So now the city and this other original developer are selling land to this developer to really put in a bigger project. Not huge. It's not a huge high rise or anything. It's still a mid rise. But what's important about this 2 3/4 acre piece of land is the fact that once this is developed, that's it. There's no more land along the waterfront, right? Of any important size. You have some land for some parks and stuff like this. And to be honest with you, I don't know exactly where this is, like the exact space. But if this is put there, someone had asked about a particular park that was supposed to be built. And I told them, to my understanding, it's still being built. Let me find it. Right? To my understanding, they're still building this, the Dressel Park. So I don't know if this takes that or not. So that's, full disclosure, I don't know. But what I do know is they're moving pretty quickly on this process, right? This must be a decent sized developer. This developer specifically stated that they see Tacoma as the next it city, right? That this is the place where now this is the developer's words, not mine or anything else, that basically this is the place where a lot of satellite offices could possibly be in the near future. Now remember, I just said that rumor has it that a satellite office of a company, a bigger company, is soon to be landing here in Tacoma, right? And so this company is wanting to jump in quick. So here's some of the basics for it, right? And before I get to that project, Pierce County year over year has had a 40% increase in apartment construction year over year. We're talking the entire county. Tacoma, on the other hand, year over year, it has been a 45% increase in apartment construction year over year. Right? That should give you an idea. The problem is that there's so many mid-rise buildings, 10 stories and below, that are being built that really take up the space of a building that could be 15 to 20 stories. And that could absorb more people. Does it cost more to do it? Yes. But a lot of these developers that you see, not all of them, there's a few, that's all they can afford to build without leveraging a lot of things. Their specialty is mid-rise buildings. But that's starting to wane a little bit, not in terms of that's the only people looking, the only developers coming. Now you're starting to have developers saying, we want to do bigger projects. There has to be a certain point, and Tacoma's quickly reaching that point. The point of price, meaning the price for apartments. The price for apartments here are starting to scale up so high that it's starting to rival a lot of King County, South King County, and other areas of King County, which is what Seattle is in. It rivals those apartment prices. And when that happens, those developers say, I'm going to take a deeper look, because why not build there? There's more demand for apartments down here than there is up in Seattle, by far. Now, will Seattle build more units than Tacoma? 4 times more in 1 year, sure. But when you're looking at the size of both cities, Tacoma is actually edging out Seattle quite a bit, right? So this one developer is selling away part of his land, and this other developer that's coming in is wanting to build 330 apartments right there on the Foss Waterway. They're going to have about 313 parking stalls. So they're building a parking garage. So understand what this means. For them to build in a 2 3/4 acre plot, in order for them to build 313 parking spaces, the building has to go up quite a bit, just for the parking garage alone, unless they dig down. And given where the location that it's at, I doubt that they can dig down very far, because you're right there on slushy land, really. But so they're going to have to build up a few stories at 3 to 4 just for the parking garage. Then when you add in 330 apartments, it goes up from there, right? So this one could be one of the larger size mid-rises that Tacoma has. Now, what's important about this, again, is not only the fact that there's no more land available down there along the waterway, right? That's available. There's no more available land. But also, this project is coming from a developer that they're not mentioning yet, that is rumored to have come from Seattle, right? That's important. The other part that's important is 16,000 square feet of retail. Now, that's pretty big. That's pretty big. 16,000 square feet of retail could be a whole host of different things. They could turn that into a grocery store. I'm not saying that's what that is. They could turn that into a grocery store. Sorry for the chickens. We have baby chicks, and so you're going to hear them. They're getting feistier every day. But that could be a grocery store. It could be several different retail spaces. But 16,000, or even a movie theater, 16,000 square feet is decent size. It'll be a small movie theater if it is. That's a pretty decent size chunk. So that's also going to be a part of this particular project. So this is a very big deal, right? Very big deal. And it's a big enough deal to where another developer is like, yeah, I'll sell it to you. You giving me money? I'll sell it to you. And the city is even saying, sure, we'll sell it to you. Why is this important? Because there's several reasons why this is important. One of the big issues downtown is the lack of grocery store. Now, people will say, well, we have a grocery store right there in Stadium. True. But in the core of downtown, there's not a viable grocery store. Even if you look at my hometown, there's a grocery store not far from downtown, like right there in downtown. And we're talking a very small city, Albuquerque, New Mexico. While it's a bigger city in terms of population than Tacoma, it's not bigger in terms of metro region. But when we're talking about Tacoma, the city is bigger. But the downtown work population, as well as the people who live in downtown Albuquerque, is much smaller than that of Tacoma. And yet they have a developer that put in a grocery store, and they have a fairly decent size movie theater, because the city told developers this is what we need. And that movie theater has done very well. The grocery store is a much newer thing, but it was one of those things they said it has to be done because it's a catalytic event for the city. If you do this, then we're going to see a lot more development. And they did see that. However, Tacoma doesn't have that. It doesn't have a grocery store right in the heart of the city. That is so important given all the development that's going on. The hot points for local developers and other developers right now in downtown Tacoma has been identified. Hilltop is one of them. That's no surprise. And Commerce Street in downtown Tacoma. Now, what's interesting about that is that both streets are where you have the Tacoma Link light rail system. And as the city starts to develop more, these developers are saying we need to be able to put our property someplace where we don't have to worry so much about vehicle traffic and all of that, where people can use the light rail system more as opposed to cars. It's much cheaper. Again, building a parking garage for an apartment developer is like building a bridge on top of itself. It's expensive. So if they can get away with that and focus more on the apartment side of things, it's a much cheaper project for them, and it's a much faster build for them as well, right? It makes it more difficult for people who live there because now you have to rely on mass transit. But because the Link light rail system is expanding so much and it opens up a whole new area, Hilltop, you're seeing more projects being looked at in those areas. Now, some people may not like that because it really does gentrify the city, but also more specifically Hilltop. But you're seeing the focus being on those two areas because you have a lot more land available, and it's a tick cheaper than what you're going to find in other places downtown. It's just a smidget cheaper. Now, I'd mentioned in another video that the Dome District is probably another location because, again, Commerce Street is pretty much done. You can't, unless you knock a building down, you really can't do much there, right? There are some plots of land here and there, but it's pretty much fully built. Hilltop does have a lot of open spaces, a lot of older buildings that you can knock down, homes that you can buy and knock down if you wanted to. You have a little bit more flexibility, but you're starting to run out. The Dome District has a lot of big, huge tracts of land. They may have old warehouses on them or what have you, but you could do a lot more and it'd be a lot cheaper than what you're finding downtown. I do think that's going to be the next it place. The reason why it's going to be the next it place in terms of the city, and it's not going to be places like Ruston, and it's not going to be places like 6th Ave, it's not going to be those places, is because of the simple fact price point. Those areas that I mentioned, 6th Ave and Proctor and all of that, the prices of homes are very expensive to begin with now. And as price goes up, it gets to the point of where people are saying, do I want to live in Seattle and pay a certain amount, or do I want to live in Tacoma on this side of town for a certain amount? It becomes a point where people will still move there, but not in huge numbers. Where you're finding the numbers are going to be in other areas of Tacoma that make good, viable sense. If you're wanting a yard, then you want something away from downtown. If you want to live in a condo or a townhouse, you want to probably focus on downtown. That's where it kind of is in the city, right? So the Dome District is probably going to be the next area, mainly because of the Link light rail system. We're talking just in a few years, you're going to be able to connect from Tacoma all the way. Every 10 minutes, a train will be leaving to connect you into the airport and into Seattle and Bellevue. And the line stops right there in the Dome District, right where there's a lot of underdeveloped areas, land, old school hotels. There are motels, I guess. All of that stuff, right? At nighttime, it's a little sketchy, right? It's a little sketchy. But given that that's where the transportation hub of the city is, it definitely is going to be probably one of the next areas that will get a lot of attention. It already is getting quite a bit of attention now with all the development. There's at least 2 more apartment projects going up outside of Tracks, which is being developed as we speak. Coe's development, I think it's either Coe's or Kaz development, has already built their apartment building right there. And there's others. But this particular project, getting back on it, Falls Harbor LLC sold their piece of land to this unnamed developer. And now the city of Tacoma is also selling a piece of land to this developer. Don't know which piece of land they're selling. For them to actually build 330 apartments. That's a huge, huge shift, a huge change. 330 apartments, we don't know the size, we don't know anything about it, but that's a huge punch. Some of the others that are coming online too are the Washington State Bank building. That also is going to bring people right in the core of downtown. Parking, there's none. They may work out some deals with some of the parking garages, but there's hardly any. So the foot traffic in Tacoma is going to grow, and the amount of demand for parking spaces is always going to be there because people need a place to park. A lot of people will not give up their cars, and a lot of people can't. So you're finding a lot of pressure, unique pressures on downtown and what's going to happen. A lot of people just take the easy way and park at the garage over there in the Dome District. Right across from Parade House Square, they just park there. It's free. A lot of parking, unless the university is active. And they just take the light rail in, right? But that building is pretty much maxed out. There's times when you can't even find a parking spot in either one of those 2 massive parking garages. That's how high the demand is. Now, one of the things I think that the city should do is similar to my hometown of Bowling Green, Kentucky. There's land downtown that the city may own, and the city should build a giant parking garage, 8 to 10 stories, right? 12 stories even. Build a 12-story parking garage. And what the city of Bowling Green did was basically have a developer do a wrap around the building, meaning that they built apartments and offices attached to the parking garage. So on 3 sides of the parking garage was apartments and office. So when you look at it, it looks like an apartment building, but it's not. It's a parking garage. And they also have retail space. They had a bottom floor along the longer side of the parking garage, which is nothing but restaurants. And then then there's like this pedestrian pavilion, and then across from that is the baseball stadium, which they put downtown, which is smart. Tacoma didn't do that. But they put their baseball stadium right downtown. It's a busy, happening area. That is something that I think that Tacoma should do, is build a parking garage, but make it look good and offer that parking. One, the city can bring in a lot of revenue for itself because of charging people to park there. But two, a lot of bigger companies are waiting for the right moment, and parking is one of those pinch points, one of those areas that really hurts the city. It needs more parking. I know that Tacoma's really wanting to get away from that and rely more on public transportation. They have a great micro mobility program and all that stuff, and they've teamed up with Razor to bring Razor scooters here on a permanent basis. I get that, or a semi-permanent basis, but those are things that developers need. And unless you address that, because even though parking's hard in Seattle, there's a lot of places to park if you're going to be there all day or most of the day. Tacoma is starting to lack on that. And a lot of the areas that do have free parking are quickly being developed. If you look at the Brewery District, that's an area that has a lot of free parking. If you look over there where the Tacoma Town Center is going up, there's a lot of free parking. However, that whole entire street that straddles the Tacoma Town Center is no longer going to even be a street that you can drive through any longer and park. It's going to be a part of the development. So you're starting to lose hundreds of parking spaces that are available, right, as the city develops. So this is interesting. I'll keep following this particular project and see what's going to go into the 16,000 square feet of retail, how big this project's going to be. I wouldn't imagine it would be too big to cover up the waterway, because a lot of people would be pissed. Because it's closer to the water, but you have the elevation rises buildings up, but you have some buildings that are only a few stories tall, and anything blocking their view, a lot of people would be a little pissed. But you can't stop progress. And I think if I was a developer, I wouldn't really care. As long as I'm getting what I need and I'm able to provide a service for the people that need it, sadate. But anyhow, again, more apartments coming into Tacoma. It's the hottest, if you don't count Bellevue so much. If you're looking at year over year, Tacoma's on a tear. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you join the Discord down in the description box below. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.